Hello, knitters. Barbara Benson here, and we are live here on YouTube. We are a week earlier than we typically do this live. There's a little bit of a mess on my desk, and it's doing weird things. It's a little bit earlier than we normally do, but I am going out of town this coming weekend. So I wanted to make sure to get this in because I always have so much fun with it. Hopefully there are some of y'all out there and you could say hi in the chat. I'm not seeing anything, which makes me wonder if something is broken. Because like the big point of this live is there we are. Hello, Celeste in Silicon Valley. That is actually so. I am going to be going to the West Coast at the end of next week. And so I'm really excited about there. Hello, Kelly. Thank you so much. I did get my hair done this week. Pretty excited about it. It took all day on the day it got done. But, every once in a while I just get a wild hair and want to do that. Hello, Velvet Plains. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Tracy. Hello, Debbie in Wisconsin. I am so glad that you joined us. Man, I should have cleaned up my desk. I have this is my gaming headset for when I'm playing my video games. We don't need it right now. I'm going to stick that under there and put this back over here. I mean, would you guys care to guess how many knitting needles I have on my desk? Like currently right now, at this very moment, how many knitting needles are on my desk? Does anyone have a guess? Hello, Tracy from Kansas. So, oh my gosh. Oh, Celeste, that's a bit much, but let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somebody had 5. Elizabeth got it. I have 5 knitting needles on my desk. And 3 of them are just knitting needles that have nothing on them. And then one of them has the very, very beginning of a shawl that I am contemplating, the tiniest of tiny, hang on, that one's in the way. So there we go. That is the tiniest beginning of a textured shawl, and it is just the setup. And then this one, I was messing around with something. Here, you can see I was playing with an idea that I vaguely remember what I was doing. I don't know. I do this a lot where I'm like, what would happen if I did X thing and what would it look like? And then I play with it and then I forget what I was doing. And it just ends up being like a puzzle for me because I'm like, what in the world was I doing at that point in time? I had a thought and I think on the needles. 58.5. So what would a half needle look like, Lee Louise? That's pretty funny. I do not do DPNs at all. I have a couple DPNs, but mostly we are only on circulars. Looks like little owls. I can see a broken needle. You know what? I don't have any broken needles hanging around, but I can imagine that you would. Hello, Diane. Who else is there? And so, yeah, I did get my hair done and you can see if I'm going to turn around. Hello, Lindsay. You brought stocking yet. Good job. So here, it's also, I don't know if you guys can see, but it goes all the way around. I went and honestly, I was like, I'm going to see what happens if I get a little bit more color this time. And I'm already thinking about next time going even even further. I don't know that I'm ready to go all in yet and just be completely unnatural color, but I'm thinking there might be next time more. Oh, velvet plains. I never noticed you wearing a silicone ring before. So nice. Do you ever find that it interferes with your tension? I do sometimes, which is why I changed my yarn tensioning finger hold method. No, it hasn't gotten in the way. I just really, yeah, it is a silicone ring. For those of y'all who don't know what we're talking about, what me and Velvet are talking about is these are it's squishy. It's made out of silicone, and living here in Florida, we have a lot of humidity. And with the amount of humidity and a lot of changes in like barometric pressure and stuff like that because of the heat and the humidity and just all of the weather that we have, my hands, I never know when I get up in the morning what size my hands are going to be. And as the day goes on, they will swell. And sometimes, if it's cooler, they shrink. And I really got to the point where I wasn't wearing my normal metal rings at all, including my wedding ring, because half the time it would get all swollen and stuck and it was uncomfortable. So I actually came across these silicone rings and I ordered a couple to see what I thought of them. And this one I really liked. And it's a lot more comfortable for me to wear because of our weather, but I have not had a problem. But I will say that I bought two rings, and this one is really, really flat. Whereas the other one that I bought and I didn't like the way it fit was more curved. And that one kind of bugged me. So, yeah, good eye, Velvet Plains. I can't believe you were able to tell it was a silicone ring from that distance. Hello, Arnetta in rainy Washington. You know what, Elizabeth? I'm gonna say that I'm pretty sure I had wacky colored hair before Fatima did, but Fatima definitely looks better in it. Or maybe we played with it about the same time. I don't know, but yes, Fatima looks awesome with all her different color hairs, and she experiments a lot more with what colors she plays with. Every time I think of going like a pink or something brighter, I have a very, very pink um skin tone, and there are a lot of colors that just aren't gonna look great on me. So I tend to stick in the teals and blues ranges because those are kind of very complementary to how ridiculously white I am. But she did add in some silver, which I thought was interesting, and there's some coral in here that brings a little bit of the pink in with it out being overwhelming and making me look like Ronald McDonald. Hello, Dory. You're in Virginia. Rainy in North Carolina. You know what? It's been raining daily here, but that's Florida. Florida is a pretty much where I live in Florida. I'm far enough south that we're pretty much not even in semi-tropical anymore. We're pretty much in a tropical zone. So we get storms regularly. We had a really bad lightning storm actually yesterday. It wasn't even raining, and there was this huge chunk and a lightning hit, and my son came running out of his bedroom because he was like, was that in the backyard? Because it was loud and bright. So that was amazing. Okay, so we have determined how many needles are on my desk. And that's really all we've accomplished so far today. We are still in the I'm having a war with YouTube and technology phase. So I am still using the webcam. I got a hair sticking straight up. I am still using the webcam. I cannot get the better iPhone to communicate, but you know what? It's not about picture quality for these lives. It's about being able to talk to y'all and have a lot of fun. Hello, my golfer. I'm so glad that you made it. Um, Speaking of technology, I got a new phone. I'm so excited. Hello, Nitwitch. Ooh, galaxy colors. That is excellent. Purple, blue, teal, and red. Excellent. So that is very, very cool. Purple was on my list, but it didn't make it in. I got a new phone and I actually have gone over to the dark side. I am no longer on Apple. I had got a Samsung. I got a Samsung, and you're like, this is silly. Why are you talking about a phone? It's cute. I have to show you my cute phone. Look how cute my phone is. It is the cutest phone that ever phoned. It is the Galaxy, and watch this. It opens up. It is so cool. It is the cutest thing ever. It's really tall. I should probably shut that down. So it's really tall and it flips shut. How cool is that? I'm so excited because I fought going to a smartphone because I loved my flip phone. I loved that it closed, and I am so excited that I now have a flip phone again. And as you can see, the hinge is really sturdy. You can like sit it down and you can like watch YouTube on it. And it's just so cute. It's taken a while to get used to the interface because it is different, but I'm getting there. Yeah, this is my new phone, and it's cool because it's got this little face. Look, it's got the little face, and you can theoretically like do stuff. But I have here we. Oh nope, I had it. Ah, continue. Look, I'm on Instagram. It's tiniest. It's the tiniest Instagram that ever Instagrammed, but it's see, and you can get to like your stuff on this face without even opening it up. So, I don't know how to get off of it. I broke it. Go away. Okay, so there's the technology update. They're so cute, Knitwitch. I just couldn't stand it. And I got to pick what color I got. And I'm like, these things are adorable. It's fun. I just it's I still have my old iPhone, and now it looks spectacularly boring. But my new iPhone, my old iPhone, is going to be permanently become my my webcam kind of situation. If, but I still can't get YouTube to, but I can run it through another piece of software, and that's what I use to record my regular videos. And so this will be doing the job. So it's going to continue to serve, but it no longer serves as like a phone time thing. I took the SIM card out and everything. Um, it doesn't feel like it's gonna break. It's really actually it's a little bit heavier than my iPhone, and it just feels really sturdy. I don't know what the heck they made this out of, but I don't know. And I will find out. I'm guessing if they start breaking, they're going to have to start replacing them, and that is going to be bad news for them. So, uh, I'm, and if it breaks, it breaks. But I'm pretty sure if it did break very quickly, that we could definitely get refunds and stuff like that because that is going to be a bad look. Okay, so we should probably talk about knitting or yarn or something like that. I actually had someone ask a question on the Facebook group. Oh, well, there we go. Tracy. Tracy, you're in here. So Tracy just asked in Watch Barbara Knit, how do you match beads to yarn? By the size of the yarn, question mark? Thank you. So I have only ever put beads on fingering weight yarn. And I believe it's the pretty much the typical size of bead that you're going to use on a fingering weight yarn is going to be, I think it's a 0/6. Let me look up bitter blue. I am over on the other side of my computer, and I'm going to pull up bitter blue to see what the requirements are. So yes, so it's what I have here is number 6 beads is what it is written up, and this one has 35 grams each of 4 different colors of the number 6 beads. There and so and Lindsay says she uses 6 zeros on fingering and 3 zeros on worsted. 6 zeros. What you have to do is a lot of it is gonna depend on how you are going to apply your beads. I apply the beads with a crochet hook. So the bead hole itself has to be large enough for you to stick the crochet hook through it, grab the yarn, and then pull a doubled up amount of yarn through that hole. So if you get smaller than a 6, it tends to not really want because what you have is you have the hook plus 2 layers of the yarn at one point going through, and it won't go through. Now, if you are pre-stringing your beads, you could definitely go with smaller beads if you have a way to apply them, like with a very fine needle or something, and you could go with smaller beads. As Lindsay said, she goes with the larger ones on worsted. And again, it's just about proportion and how it's going to look and being able to pull the doubled up amount of yarn through that hole if you are applying with either a crochet hook or dental floss or a Flegel beater or whatever type of beading device you're using. Both the beading device and a doubled up amount of the yarn has to go through that hole. Okay. Okay, so LPGA. I have had this question for the longest time, but I know you will tell me you are not a garment knitter. Can I ask it anyway? Ask it anyway. We'll see if we can like group think it. Um, Yes, and, Lindsay, Knit Eco Chic also mentioned glass seeds beads. So you definitely I very much prefer the glass seed beads, and I'll go a step further and say I prefer the Japanese beads. You can buy inexpensive beads, but I will tell you it's an anecdotal story, but I had a good friend who made the shipwreck shawl, which is this huge circular shawl that has thousands, literally thousands of beads on it, and it's one that is a stranded, and the way that she was planning on doing it is she knit it in a natural color, like it was undyed. You put the beads on and then you dye it. And she was sliding these beads, and there were so many beads that she did. She got online and found an inexpensive source for them. And then not until she had finished it and was trying to dye it, did she discover that these cheap beads, the inside of the bead actually still had some of the manufacturing oil in it, and where she had slid it along when she tried to dye it, the oil had gotten into the yarn and it didn't dye because that oil rubbed off onto the yarn, and she literally had to throw the entire project away. So some of the cheaper beads that you can buy, it might seem like a really great bargain, but the insides of them can have oil, and also the insides cannot be polished nice enough, and they're like they get like a little bit sharp, and they can catch and cut your yarn. So I would just beware of like really good deal type beads, especially if you're going to put a lot of time and effort into it. Invest in high quality beads, and I personally prefer the glass Japanese beads. Okay. Okay, so we have people saying that the flip phones have been out for a while and they're not breaking, so that's good. LPGA. I just got Miyuki. See, that's one of the Japanese ones. Oh, and you're getting a 6 on a DK? Well, that's cool to know. So you've gone down as small as an 8 on fingering weight. I've never gone down as small as an 8 because I always felt like it didn't have enough physical presence to like if I'm gonna put that much work into putting beads on something, I want it to be visible. And the little tiny, tiny ones, I don't feel as, but you know what? It's whatever you want to do. Oh, yes, that's an excellent point, Lindsay. Knit Eco Chic. Pre-stringing turns into a nightmare if you frog. 100%. Um, I have the tiniest of tiny crochet needles, but I don't know that it's readily accessible. I think it's in a box with all my other beads. I actually have a clover one that's so
Yeah.
tiny that it has like a little metal sheath that goes over it because it is tiny, tiny, tiny. So so yeah, you can get it's those tiny, tiny, tiny steel crochet needles. But there's also something called a Fleegle beater, Fleegle, I think. Let me look it up. That people really like and swear by. Um, they're a much longer. I don't know if you can still get them from the actual. Okay, so it looks like they're even available on Amazon now. No, those are used. So you can find them. I just found some on Etsy, the Fleegle beater. And what that is it's like it's really long and it's got the hook at the end and like a stopper at the other end so you can load up more beads. And a lot of people really like those. Um, Hi, Susan Day. Crocheted for 48 years and knitting for 2. Well, there you go. You're up on me on crochet. I'm so glad you found us, and I'm so glad you joined us. Yeah, Lenore, she did all that work, and then she dyed it, and there were tears. So it was so bad. So bad. Celeste, excellent point. Japanese beads are also far more consistent in size than others. And that is the truth. Because it's really frustrating when you're taking your little crochet hook and you try to poke in a bead and it doesn't poke. It's annoying. The kind of beads I really like, there's some really cool beads that you can get that are actually the inside of them, like is like painted like gold or a metallic, and the bead itself is clear, so it's got that center, or the bead itself is like a transparent color. I really like that style of bead. There's so many cool beads. I went to a bead show once. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. There's so many cool beads out there. So, um, I have worked with I'm gonna link to this. I don't normally link to companies, but I have worked with this company and she is absolutely amazing. And she sells kits for some of my patterns that have beads on it. This is earthfair.com and she sells very high quality beads. So those are the beads for bitter blue and for when I did bitter blue and when I did Earthbound Misfit, because we needed custom colors for that and I needed a custom color combo to go and complement these particular patterns. So actually I worked with the Unique Sheep and they did the custom color dye, the yarn, and then the lovely lady at Earth Fair like made custom bead combinations that complemented those yarns, and she also sells kits and bead kits for shawls. So but she also just sells the beads, so I really highly recommend her stuff is very high quality, and she's specifically about knitting and crocheting and bead work, so she understands the needs and the special, of what kind of beads you need for yarns. Yes, Lee Louise, cheap beads can cut your yarn. Oh no, 24 karat gold plated. That's a bit much. No, those things can get really, really expensive. Okay, Susan Day, do I have any suggestions when working with fingering weight that is a silk blend? I'm really struggling when I try to work with a single strand. I do have both bamboo and steel chow goose. So what are you struggling with? If what you're struggling with is the slipperiness, then your bamboo is probably going to help you because silk is slippery. Uh, it depends on what you're knitting. Now, if you're knitting lace and what you're struggling with is getting your stitches like to do what you want them to do, what you might need is a pointy needle. So different needles work in different ways, and it depends on what challenges you are facing. Um, but with silk, it's mainly about controlling that slip factor. But again, if you're doing detailed lace, it might be that your needle's not pointy enough. It just depends on what your challenge is, and I'm sure you're gonna share that with us. Color, you know what? And Cindy says, I've heard that the color on some of the inexpensive ones chips off. I can totally see that happening too. You just got to be, sometimes you get what you pay for. And if I'm going to spend hours and hours and hours of my time knitting something with beads on it, I'm going to use the good stuff. And I know not everybody can, and you work with whatever works within your budget. I don't want to in any way be snobby or shame anyone. You work with what's in your budget. Just be careful about really bargain basement stuff. Hi, Darlene. Thank you for joining us. Okay, you're okay, my golfer. For sweaters, can I assume that a size 2 will be generally the same for all professional designers across the board? If what you are saying is the size 2 of a garment, like saying a women's size 2, no, you cannot assume that even remotely. A good garment pattern is going to provide you with whatever size they call it, and they should provide you with finished measurements. And if it's not in the detail information, it should be on the schematic where you can see the finished measurements. But you cannot in any way assume that they have designed to a similar standard, because there are multiple different types of standards that people use. Some designers don't use a standard, and they make up their own. I know that Isolde Teague did an extensive study at one point in time and developed her whole own sizing chart. People work to different things, and a 2 might not mean what you think it is. There are some people, some designers who stick with the extra small, small, medium, large nomenclature, 1X, 2X, 3X. There are some that just want to get rid of what they perceive as the kind of judgmental element of being a large, and they just number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And literally all that one means there is it is the smallest size. That does not give you any information as to what size it is per se. So you need to look at the finished measurements. A lot of times they won't say 1, they won't say large, extra large. It'll just give you the bust measurements. Or it'll say 32, 34, 36, 38, what have you. Or sometimes patterns will say to fit 32, 34, 38-inch chest, bust. If it says to fit, that means if there is any ease in the garment, it is built into that particular size. So sometimes it'll say 32 inches and that's the finished measurement. Sometimes it'll say to fit 32 inches. And if it is a piece that has 2 inches of positive ease, that means to fit 32 inches would mean that the actual finished measurement is going to be 34 inches. All of that is way more information than you asked for. I can give you, I 100% no. Do not assume that a 2 is a 2 is a 2 is a 2. Under no circumstances should you do that, because every single designer is going to have different standards. Okay. Hello, and in London. Oh, it's so, you need to go to bed, but thank you for saying hi. I hope you're still here. But thank you so much for popping in. Yeah, Karen from Patterns Ed Browse's designer's choice to what to call the sizes. Exactly. They could call them Larry, Moe, and Curly. They can do whatever they want at that point. Okay, Kelly. I'm going to scan Kelly. That's a really interesting question, but I'm going to scan a little bit more. Yay, Tri Spiral. I'm so glad that you managed to join us and you are here. Yes, Nidiko Chic. Check out for finished bust. For garments, you need to look at the bust measurement. I'm planning to knit, oh, Louise. I'm planning to knit one of my lace mosaic shawls. The yardage in the book says 650 yards. Does that mean 650 or 325? Louise, if you could tell me what specific pattern you're talking about, because I'm pretty sure that's going to be divided by 2, but I'm not 100% sure, and I have the book right here. Rippus. Okay. Rippus is 2 skeins of fingering weight. So that's going to be... So if you look at the page, it says Bala Hoya, 100% superwash merino, 400 yards per 360 per 100 grams, and 1 skein of one color and 1 skein of another color. So that's actually 800 yards total, 400 of each. Where did you get the 650? I'm not seeing where you got 650, because looking at Rippus, it's 400 yards a piece. Oh, there we go. And then it says, note, you will need approximately 300 yards per color in the book. No, don't go away. Okay, she'll be back. Okay. But yeah, you need right at 300 yards. I don't know where 650 came from, but right at 300 yards of each skein when she's back. So yeah, it says it. I really tried to put as much information as possible in the book. Do not fall down. Stay. Okay. Okay, you're back. There aren't, well, there might be different editions. But they should not have changed anything from edition to edition. There are errors that were corrected, but that is what it should look like. And it says you will need approximately 300 yards of each color. I'm super curious. I would be very curious to know if yours has different information on it, because that would be super, super weird. Okay. That is a complex question, Velvet Plans, and I don't have enough knowledge of the crochet industry. There isn't a huge amount of overlap between knitting. I mean, there is overlap between knitters and crocheters, but it's not as big as you would think. The only thing I would say is try it and see what happens. If you design something beautiful enough, there are people who will want to make it. And what I would say specifically about that is especially if you are selling your pattern online, you need to write your pattern, knit the thing up. You need to have it tech edited. You need to make sure it's error free, blah, blah, blah. But in my opinion, the number one thing, assuming you have a well-written pattern, yada, 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 the number one thing that makes or breaks the success of a pattern is the photography. Because when you're online, the only thing that your consumer has to make their choice of whether or not they want to make that thing is looking at the photograph. And a compelling photograph, a beautiful photograph, a professional appearing photograph is going to communicate so much more and inspire people. And it really is going to draw people to want to make the thing. So really the photography is essential for any aspiring designer. If and I really feel like people need to realize that just because you have a camera doesn't make you a photographer. And if you seriously want to do it, you might want to see if you have any friends who specialize in photography. I personally actually, I do my own photography, but I've been doing photography since I was like 7 years old. It was a passion of mine long, long before I ever started knitting. And I've done professional photography, so that's just part of my skill set. But sometimes it's going to be worthwhile to actually pay a professional photographer. And when I can't get my photographs, if I can't get photographs done, I will pay a professional photographer to take photographs, because it really is the only thing that is communicating to your consumer what they're going to create. Um, yeah, it's the thing is the thing with photography, Velvet Plans, is it is as much of an art form as the textile arts. It's as much as it's as it's challenging. And y- as a designer, you're expected to wear a lot of hats. You got to be your marketing director, you got to be the photographer, you got to be the designer, you got to be the customer support, you have to be everything. But the like, I don't do Photoshop at all, because for me to get good enough at Photoshop that it would work, I would have to, like, go to school for 6 months, because it is a skill that has to be learned. Photography is a skill that has to be learned. It's a little bit easier with digital photography, because at least you're not, having to pay to develop 36 pictures at a time, which is how I learned to do photography. But because digital makes it easier, but you just gotta, sometimes you gotta suck it up and pay a professional, to get the photographs. Deborah, yes, I do have blue and teal hair with a little bit of extra stuff in it. It is not your PC. It did not break. Elizabeth, you are correct. Certain colors don't photograph well, and that is something I definitely take into consideration when selecting the yarns to create my patterns. And it's not that they don't photograph well; it's they don't photograph well digitally. There are limitations to uh, the digital photography medium. And one of the things specifically is the sensors inside phones and inside digital cameras are very, very bad at red and any color that contains a strong amount of red, which is why you run into problems with some purples. It's just that it is something that digital cameras they don't do well. If you're using a film camera, you can photograph red all day long, but nobody uses film cameras anymore. It's almost impossible to get film developed. And there are really high-end cameras that can handle it, but those are very expensive cameras. Most people don't have those. So yes, don't don't knit the sample in red if you can avoid it, because red is very, very difficult to photograph, and very reddy purples. You run into problems with that. Um, you know what, Cindy? Yes, the ranunculus. Okay, so here's the thing. Yes, I know, Knit Eco Chic. I know you love Photoshop, and you're very good at Photoshop because you've worked hard at being good at Photoshop. I'm not good at it. So Cindy Rowett said, photography and the model. Ranunculus is an example of a not so flattering, poor model fit, but ranunculus is an incredibly popular pattern because of the photograph. And the thing is while it's not a great picture of the actual item, it is an aspirational photograph. It is a photograph that conveys a specific atmosphere. It has this soft French boho, je ne sais quoi kind of feel to it. And she's got the big doe eyes, and she's sweet and waif like. And there is something to be said for it being compelling because people buy into that aesthetic and that lifestyle. There are other patterns that when you actually look at the photograph and analyze it, it is not a particularly good photograph of either the model or the piece being knitted, but the photograph itself is so compelling as a beautiful photograph that people want to be that person in that photograph. So there's a lot going on in the photography. There is a lot to learn to do photography. I've spent many, many years. Uh-oh, a myth. I missed a myth. Karen Arbery. What was the myth? Crocheter. Now, crocheters can knit and knitters can crochet and everybody can needle felt and you can weave and you can embroider and you can do whatever your little heart wants you to do. You know what? Yes to photos. Patterns with photos unblocked and ends hanging out make me feel like free or paid and the person didn't care. Yes. That a lot of that is, and this is when I talk to aspiring designers, it's kind of the whole adage, the whole dress for the job you want, not the job that you're necessarily applying for. You know, if you want to be perceived as a professional, even if it's your first pattern, you need to present yourself professionally, which means professional photographs, which means the very first pattern you put out, either you need to have put the time and effort into it or have hired a graphic designer to create a good pattern layout, because consistency from pattern to pattern is very important. So already have an idea and know this is how my pattern is going to look. This is how it's going to be structured. This is how I'm going to label repeats. This is the font that I'm going to use. Um, I'm going to put my abbreviations here. I'm going to put my abbreviations on the last page. I'm going to use this consistent wording, and you're going to use professional photography. If you present yourself as a professional, you will be perceived as a professional. If you don't, then you won't. Um, okay, okay. Yeah. Yeah, what ranunculus is a very, very strange pattern. Oh, we're going to ignore PETA for now. Sorry, golfer. I really don't want to get into that because it's just too much. It's too much. Susan, okay, yeah. So you practicing with the silk yarn. Silk is very slippery, and another thing about silk is silk doesn't have any give. Okay, it doesn't have any stretchiness. It doesn't have any give to it. So the way you tension it is going to be important. And also, you may find if you're used to working with animal fibers, you may find that you can't knit as long with silk because silk can put additional strain on your hands. Because there is no give to it, and it can cause some tension issues in your hands. So be careful with that. Don't knit it too much. Deborah, thank you so much. Yes, if you like the video, if you're enjoying the live, please give it the thumbs up so that YouTube might suggest it to somebody else. Oh my goodness, Missouri, fun. Okay, so there was someone who had a question way back that was a really good question, and I said we'll come back to it. Here we go. Kelly Stone. Are you still here, Kelly? As a knitwear designer, how do you determine the gauge when designing a pattern? Okay. Katie, yes, cotton is in the same boat as silk in that it doesn't have any give, it doesn't have any bounce to it. Um, so that's the thing. Okay. So I hope that Wait a minute. I just found it. Oh, Kelly Stone. Are you still here, Kelly Stone? I hope you are. I'm gonna wait and see if she's still here before I start answering the question. I may have delayed too long. I get distracted. I'm so sorry. Um, so ranunculus is really popular because you don't really have to do gauge. You can use almost any freaking yarn you want, and it doesn't fit. Okay, it doesn't fit. So you don't have to worry about gauge, and you don't have to worry about most of that because it's kind of like wearing a sack. So it's very popular because I have seen it knit in every different kind of yarn, from lace weight up to bulky yarn, and somehow it looks good in every single one of them, and people are happy with it, and it's an easy, straightforward pattern. So that is the popularity of it. Yay, Kelly. Okay. So it depends. Determining, yeah, it does. It looks like a sack, Ruthie, but you know what? It's a look. It's the boho look. People like it. So gauge, gauge for a pattern. A lot of it is going to depend on what you're trying to accomplish, because as a designer, you're going to be thinking about, like, you think about your pattern from the get-go. What are you designing? Because the gauge, your goal gauge, is going to be dependent on what you're creating. Because the gauge you're going to go for a sock is going to be a very dense gauge. The gauge you're going to go for a standard sweater that's designed like to keep you warm is going to be a fairly decent, a fairly dense, not dense like a sock, but it's going to be a fairly solid gauge. If you're going for something, if you want drape, if you want it more open, you're going to go for a looser gauge. If you're making a shawl, which is what I primarily make, you're again going for a looser gauge. You want them more open. So from the get-go, when you're designing, you are thinking about how do I want this fabric to behave? And then you customize your gauge to get the fabric that you want. Do I want a fabric that can, up to and including like a cushion? I designed a footstool. Do I want it to be able to stand up by itself? Am I doing an Aran sweater and I want it to like repel water? Do I want a droopy hat? Do I want a stand up hat? You have to have an idea as a designer of what type of fabric you're going for. Then once you know what you want, and you've picked out the yarn, what yarn you pick out is going to be important. Again, if I'm going for drape, I might look for something that has silk in it. I might look for something that has rayon in it. I might look for something that has bamboo in it. I might look for something maybe even with alpaca in it, something that is going to exaggerate that drape. So once I know what fabric I want, and then I know what yarn I'm going to use, I will start swatching. And I will just give it my best guess as far as what gauge, what needle, based on my personal needle, like what I do. I will start knitting a gauge swatch, and I will block it, and I will see if it is the fabric that I want. If it is not, I will adjust my needle size and play with it until I get the fabric that I want. Okay? Then I do all of the math for that pattern based on that gauge. And that will tell me how much yarn I need. That will tell me what size it's going to be, all of that kind of stuff. I will completely finish it. I will block it. And then once the garment is finished, the gauge that is on the pattern will be measured from that finished garment. It is the actual gauge that I achieved when I was working the garment. And that is my hands, my needles, the yarn I used. Okay. And so when you're looking at a pattern and it says a size 7 needle, all that is telling you is that is what it took me to achieve that gauge. You need to use whatever needle you need to use to achieve that gauge. And having to go up or down a needle size is not a moral failing. It's just what you need to do to get the gauge that you want. Okay. Um, Okie doke. That was a whole lot of gauge information. Okay, Velvet. Craft design, eat, sleep, repeat. Um, I don't know. Okay, Velvet Plans, Craft Design, Eat, Sleep, Repeat podcast suggested the possibility of bartering for tech editing and or grading services. What do you think of this? What, if anything, could be offered for barter? Okay, so initially I was like, I don't know about that, but then I realized I actually was in a barter situation for many years. And what I bartered is as I'm oh, my computer did something funny. As I mentioned, I am a professional photographer and I do the photography the vast majority of my patterns. I have a very good friend. Her name is Fatima, and she is also a designer. Now, I do not like being in front of the camera. I like taking photographs. Fatima is a stunningly beautiful woman and she enjoys having her photograph taken. So we had a barter situation where I would photograph her designs. I took the photographs for her designs that she did, and then she would model for my designs. I did the photography for both and she modeled both. So I thought I got the better end of that bargain because I got to take photographs of her and she was beautiful in the things that I designed. And she got, from me, the photographs of her stuff for her to use for her patterns. So that was definitely a barter situation. What I had to offer was the photography, and she is an excellent model. She's a knitwear model. She's very, very good at it. She's very, very good at styling, and that is a skill that she had that I very much did not have. And otherwise, I would have had to have paid a model. So, modeling photography was a barter that I had. I do know that there are tech editors. I know tech editors that like swap. They tech edit for each other. So what they're bartering is tech editing. I don't know. You would have to talk to the individuals what they would be willing to barter and what their, you know, what the exchange rate would be on that. Um, Ruthie K. Yes, determining gauge involves lots of swatching. 100%. Okay, Nido Eco Chic is saying, often it's newer tech editors, graders who offer barters. I recommend new designers working with seasoned tech editors, graders, because two newbies in the biz is a bit of a blind leading the blind. And I agree with that because tech editing is a really important step. Yes, Fatima is absolutely lovely. And I was super bummed when we both left Atlanta and she couldn't be my model anymore, which is why you now see a lot of my photographs are being taken on my silent partner over here because I don't have a model down here. I haven't been able to find someone, and I've tried to find professional models down here, but unfortunately, being in Sarasota, Florida, every time I look for, and I joined like a photography group on Facebook here, and all of the models here are much more focused on um bikini and sports. It's like most of their portfolios are them in bikinis with sports cars and things like that. It's just a very different look than what I'm looking for. That's not really what I'm looking for. I very much would prefer more of a knitter next door look. And you will see when I can con her into it. More a lot of my recent photographs have a you will see a more mature woman in them, and that is my mother. But I cannot always con her into doing it. And often she is out of town because she likes going places and doing stuff because she's retired. So you get my silent partner a lot, and you can get my mom. Okay, so the 6 to 650 yards for Rippus is what it says on Ravelry's pattern page. Ravelry's pattern page. The problem with Ravelry's pattern pages is they can be edited by absolutely anyone. They can be edited by anyone, and unless I go through every single one, sometimes things get wonky. But it's 6 to 650 divided by 2, so you're going to need roughly 300 yards of each. Yeah, bikini in a winter shawl would 100% be a look, especially since most of them, I don't know that the bikini would make it, the shawl would make it around their assets. They are beautiful women, and I wish them all the best of luck. It is not the type of modeling that I'm looking for. Try looking for religious women. It's, you know what? Sarasota is a weird, weird, weird place, I have discovered. Um, okay. Where are we? Have I caught up? Didn't get any feedback. So Kelly, do you feel better about understanding gauge? Did I understand what you were asking, or did I just talk about something completely different? Because I could have just gone off the rails in one direction. You know what, Ruthie? There actually is a religious community here. Sarasota is a very interesting place. We have a very large Mennonite community here. Very large Mennonite community, and some Amish. Um, and also a fairly substantial number of retired circus people, which leads to seeing some interesting people around. So there's that part too, because this is Sarasota is home to Ringling. So, and then we have the Ringling College of Art and Design, which in and of itself is very interesting. Sarasota is a very, very arts oriented community. We have a lot of public art, and a lot of it is very weird. It's not so it's a really interesting, it's an interesting place. Ooh. Velvet plans. Do you think you could pick one of your designs as your favorite ever? Also, what one pattern would you recommend someone brand new to your patterns to get a good feel for your style? Did you just sit up late trying to ask me the hardest question that you could possibly ask me? I could not. There is no way that I could say um one of my patterns that's my favorite pattern ever. It's not something I can say. Because, and as far as my style goes, my style, are you talking about my writing style, or are you talking about my design style? Because my design style has changed over time, and I really feel like I have oh yes, Caladan has beads. Oh wow, I was not expecting you to say circus people. Yes, circus people. Uh, it's really interesting. So I would say I have two distinctly different design styles, that I think in a way um, aligns with I don't know. In my brain, I separate my designs into two categories. Okay. I have, and I just do this because it rhymes. I have my crazy patterns and I have my lazy patterns. Okay. There are the patterns that I designed when I was trying to come up with something where I was asking myself a question, what happens if I do this? When I was trying to really push the edge of things that can be done and experimenting with different types of ideas and textures and colors and techniques and combining techniques that weren't necessarily envisioned to be combined by anyone. And they're patterns that are going to be challenging to most knitters. When I In the first several years of my designing, the knitting group that I knit with had a very good friend of mine who has passed away. Her name was Ellen, and she had been knitting for like forever. And one of my goals was to work up a swatch and bring a swatch in, and I would show her the swatch. And what I wanted her to do is look at the swatch and do the dog head tilt. Look at the swatch and go, how did you do that? I wanted to be able for it not to be immediately evident on the surface how that was accomplished. And then when she would read the pattern and it would make sense, she'd be like, "Oh, that's innovate." So I have those patterns that I really am trying to get that head tilt out of even experienced knitters. And then I have the patterns, my lazy patterns, that are patterns that are comfort knitting patterns. They're patterns that don't take a lot of brain power. Now, I don't I don't design super, 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 super basic patterns. All of mine have a little bit of something, but so I have these two categories. So in design style, um, I don't have one specific design style because things will just pop into my head and I'll just have to pursue them. Um, yeah, and lazy. So and the thing is sometimes you don't feel like thinking about it. Sometimes you don't like putting a lot of time and effort into it. Sometimes you just want something you can do on cruise control, and that's when the lazy patterns come in. And sometimes you want to go bonkers. Elizabeth, just say no. Just say no to knit bikinis. Yeah. So Elise, you like confundo and spirit and opportunity. Thank you so much. Now confundo was my I would put confundo more towards the lazy end of the spectrum. It is just a very straightforward mosaic pattern. It's just color work mosaic, and it's a really straightforward pattern, and I really enjoy that one. Spirit and opportunity is a mosaic lace pattern, so that's always going to be a little bit higher. But as mosaic lace goes, spirit and opportunity is fairly low on the complexity level. Elizabeth Forrester, she does love a good scarf. So a good scarf is um, it's actually a very strange combination of the two because most people who look at it cannot figure out how I accomplished what I accomplished. But it is literally the easiest pattern of mine that you could knit. Of all my patterns, it is the easiest pattern you could possibly knit. It was literally designed to be as easy as possible, to have the instructions be as simple as possible. But the way it is accomplished is a bit of a head scratcher until you get into it. So that is what Elizabeth, I think, would recommend. And Elizabeth has knit quite a few good scarves. I have opened up my computer. I would say that my most distinctive contribution to the knitting industry overall is the mosaic lace. And that is something I developed, which is a combination of lace knitting and slip stitch color work mosaic lace. And that is I think fairly unique to me. Other people have done similar things since I published the book, but I don't think anyone has done it to the extent that I have. The very first pattern, mosaic lace pattern, was Golden Lion Throne. And then there is The absolute top end of my wackiness is courant, and courant is a colorwork Estonian lace shawl, so it is the very top end. But it would not be a good representative of my pattern writing style because it was originally published through a third party, through Twist Collective. So I had to write to their pattern standards. So it really isn't a good representation um of my writing style. Uh Maybe Love Child? Love Child is a colorwork lace. Again, it depends on what complexity level you want to be, Velvet. I'm just wandering all over the place with this question. Oh, Knit Eco Chic liked Peephole Hat, and Peephole Hat is a mosaic lace piece, and it's a fairly straightforward pattern. That is really really straightforward. Yes, Celeste, I do like my Dune, and the Dune is where it all started. The Dune shawls were my very beginning. Um, Again, it depends on what you want to make. Velvet. Um, if you okay, so you have no interest in color work. So if we're just going straight lace, um, what complexity level are you good? Oh, is somebody leaving? Oh, Sito. You like Sito. I don't know that many people have knit Sito, Elise. Thank you. I like Sito. It is weird though. It is definitely on the weird side. Um, it definitely is not in the lazy category. It was me experimenting with shaping, and I think it came out really cool. You know what? We were talking about beads. Each to each has beads on it. Um, Earthbound Misfit has lace and beads, and it is a fairly cool pattern. No color work, no color work. I have a whole book of bulky lace, but those patterns are not available individually. You might like Irulan. Irulan is it's not hard, but you have to very much pay attention to the process because if you get off in count at any point, you're hosed. You got to scrap it. You got to start over again. Thank you, Knit Eco Chic. I do like Scarab Shawl, and Scarab Shawl is it's another again, it's me doing weird stuff. So Scarab Shawl is in the same category as Golden Lion Throne, and I really need to design another one of these. I call them just the fun part. So a lot of knit shawls are you start at the top and you have to knit your way through like an acre of garter or stockinette until you get to the bottom, and then you get to do the lace trim. Well, with Scarab Shawl and Golden Lion Throne, I'm like, let's just scrap all the boring part. You cast on like 100 and something stitches, and you're just knitting that lace trim. So it's this long, thin, almost scarf like piece, but it's long so it can be wrapped around multiple times. The way I personally like to wear them is I just drape them like they're a cowl in front and just let the tails dangle down my back. And I feel like I'm a superhero with a cape on. It just makes me happy. But a scarab shawl, I do very much like. That is, and again, the shape of it is a little on the weird side. And both Irulan and scarab shawl very much reflect one of my personal design aesthetics, which is if you look at a lot of my work, it's heavily influenced by the Art Deco and Art Nouveau movements. Um, You can really see it in both Irulan and Scarab Shawl. You can see that Art Deco, Art Nouveau influence because they have very strong lines, but they're very swoopy at the same time. Oh, the shawl, the so I have a couple of Alice in Wonderland shawls. I have In Uffish Thought and Curiouser. In Uffish Thought was a I was playing with shaping in a fish thought, and it's why it has those weird little teeth along the end. And the killing point of in a fish thought is it has these tiny cables on it that just made me super happy when I knit them. In a fish thought is really good for variegated yarns, release thing. For beadwork, you need beads and you need a tiny crochet hook. That's pretty much all you need for when you're knitting with beads. Tiny crochet hook, bead. And I actually have a video. Very old video on how to bead your knitting with a crochet hook. And you can see my tiny crochet hook in that. Thank you so much, Lindsay. No mistakes on your stockinette. Excellent. Okay. Oh, or oh, are you talking about A Grin Without a Cat? I went too old. A Grin Without a Cat, Elizabeth. That is the most recent. I have more than one Alice in Wonderland theme. That's the problem. I also have one called Geyer and Gimbal. So that would be A Grin Without a Cat, and that is a fairly simple lace. That has a fairly straightforward lace to it. Ruthie, thank you so much. Ruthie said that some of her favorite designs of mine are my men's designs. And thank you, because I really try to I like doing unisex designs, and I do like doing men's designs. And I'm not convincing my husband to model them is not always the easiest thing to do. But mostly for men, I do like hats and cowls and things. But in my books, I tried really hard to get men in lace, because that's like a goal I have. So trying to design some more masculine looking lace patterns is something I like. Okay, you have fun. How many patterns have I designed? So according to Ravelry, it says 146 is what Ravelry says. So that is how many I have published to Ravelry. I don't know that there are any that wouldn't be in there. So yeah, 146. It's a lot. it's a lot of knitting, man. That is a lot of knitting. Yes, the lace version of Curiosity is called And Curiouser, which is another Alice in Wonderland reference. You know what? Impulse buy definitely falls into what I consider my lazy category, but it's lazy for lace. It is lace, so it's not 100% turned off your brain, but it is a very straightforward pattern. It is just yarn, knit two together, yarn over, and the only time you have to really think about anything is at the beginning when you're creating the setup. Once the setup is over and you've added in the garter, it's pretty much 4-row repeat. It's a 4-row repeat and you just go. So it is a good one. Oh, Karen, thank you so much. That is a pattern I wrote a very long time ago. It's one of my very first lace patterns, and I was just so excited to get it in that book. I still like it. It's sometimes, you worry about looking back at things you've done in the past and maybe not being quite so, proud or enamored of it, but I still like it. I think it's a good pattern. It's a great headband. So, I hope you enjoy it. It's a good book too. Ruthie K. I wonder how long it takes you to create a design and have some of the easiest ones been the hardest to create. Excellent. Yes. Yes, golfer. You can load up multiple beads on your hook so you don't have to dip every single time. So, yes, Ruthie, some of the easiest ones are the hardest to create, because simple is hard, easy is hard. Um, if you want something to be visually compelling, which is what most of us want, I think, the easiest way to make it visually compelling is to add complexity, to use a fancy stitch, to use a stitch that's not commonly used, to add lace, to add cables, to add all of these things. But with everything that you add, every shaping that you add, every increase, every decrease, every pick up stitches you add adds complexity. And trying to design something that is visually appealing, yet very easy or simple is very difficult. A good scarf is the biggest example of that. It literally, the pattern is one line, but to arrive at that one line took a lot of experimentation and a lot of brain power to figure out how to. And when I originally wrote it, it wasn't one line. I had to pare it down and remove elements and figure things out and work on the balance of it and get it so it looked just the way I wanted it to look and was only one line of instruction. So the development of that pattern was, yes, a significant challenge. And because my personal impulse is to over elaborate, to add in lace, to add in cables, to do all that kind of stuff. Oftentimes, when I am designing something, I start at one point and I'm swatching and I have to look at it and be like, what can I remove? What can I pull out of this? How can I pull elements out without having the whole thing collapse like Jenga? How many pieces can I pull out and still have the core design concept remain stable and attractive? And that is like Peephole Stole was an excellent example of that because it started out much more complex and I pulled and I pulled and I pulled to get it down to its very basic nature without losing its substance. Um, because some people like challenges, easier things or less complex things, easier to execute things appeal to a wider range of people, and therefore I sell more patterns. So while I still do complex stuff because that is what I love, I also have to work hard to pare things down. Um, Ruthie K, that is a so nice thing to say. Ralph Lauren level of aesthetics. Thank you. I really try. You, Celeste, I want to see the pattern with all the pieces. Well, if you want a pattern with all the pieces, then Courant is what you want. That is one with all of the pieces still intact. Courant is like that. What else has Golden Lion Throne? Golden Lion Throne has all of the pieces. Geyer and Gimbal. Geyer and Gimbal has all of the pieces. Reciprocity is not one that many people have knit, and it's fairly complex. They're in there. If you look through my portfolio, the wacky stuff is still in there, and I may gain the brain power to come back to it at some point. But right now, I'm running on like half a tank most of the time. Um, yeah, they take a while to knit. But as far as as far as how long does it take to do a design, it can take a variety. It depends on how long I need to think about it. It depends on because there's the pondering portion of the program that is kind of undefinable in me trying to get things figured out. Courant Courant is the Estonian mosaic lace, and the initial swatch for Courant took me 6 months to develop. I worked on that swatch and variants of that swatch, and then working on the chart and working on the techniques and creating 2 completely a left-leaning and a right-leaning 5-stitch color work decrease. Um, it took a good 6 months in development to develop the swatch for Courant. And then I proposed that pattern to the Twist Collective, and then they're like, "Yes, we want you to make this." And I was like, "Oh crap, now I gotta knit it." And that was 1,200 yards. And so it took me 3 months to knit it before I sent it off to the magazine to be photographed. So that's I mean, Courant was in simmering for probably 9 months. Golden Lion Throne, the very first mosaic lace piece I did, took weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, if months, of development. And working on things and swatches and swatches. I can get a pattern done. I think the bare minimum for me to get a pattern done from start to finish is 2 months. It's probably 2 months, which there will not be a new pattern in July because I do not have anything ready. I've been really good this year so far. I've got ahead of myself and had some that were just waiting to be published, but now I've blown through all of those and I don't have anything ready yet. So we're not going to have a new pattern in July. August is iffy. I need to come up this little tiny shawl maybe, but I don't know. We got to come up with something. Oh, Ruthie, Ready Player One. I love Ready Player One. And that is a combination. So that starts off with texture. The texture is very, very easy. Then it has a fairly straightforward mosaic pattern, and then it's got the lace on the bottom. The lace can be a little bit challenging because it's got those long diagonals, which means that it's difficult for stitch markers. It's hard to use stitch markers with that because we have yarn overs that jump between repeats. The decreases in yarn overs jump between repeats. But yes, Ready Player One has a nice mix of complexity. Clupidier, no. Clupidier is, I would not say Clupidier is difficult at all. If you can do color work, if you can do lace and you're ready to tackle color work, the chart is literally this big, is a tiny, tiny chart. Clupidier, if you want to tackle mosaic lace, I would say Clupidier is a good place to start. It's a fairly straightforward pattern. It's a good pattern. I like it. That's why I wrote it. Katie, thank you. Courant is Courant might be close to being my favorite pattern that I've designed. It definitely is the top end of my wackiness. It is pretty much high as my complexity has gotten. And when it comes down to it, it really isn't as difficult. I mean, I'm not saying it's not difficult, but it's not as difficult as it looks. If that is okay. It looks like it's completely off the charts, but if you are an experienced lace knitter, it is definitely doable because the color work doesn't really add that much to it. If you're an experienced lace knitter, and I would say, like if you're not afraid to tackle Estonian lace, then it is entirely doable for most experienced lace knitters. I do love that pattern. Yay. Well, it is colorwork lace, Ruthie. Are you comfortable with lace? Because if you haven't done lace, I wouldn't recommend doing colorwork with lace as your first one. Um, like here. There it is. Like au courant. It's French. It's French. I did not name it. Again, this was originally published in a third-party publication. So I was not the you will see that there are actually two sets of photographs on that page. One is a blue on blue, and then one is like a brown and cream color. I did not name it, and I did not pick the colors for the initial publication. This pattern has gone through a number of evolutions because it was knit in a yarn and that yarn was discontinued, and then I had it knit again and that yarn was discontinued, and I'm just sticking with what I got. I'm not going to have it knit again. Oh, oh, you speak French. I don't. It's au courant is what it was supposed to be. But then they like take a picture of it in a with a canoe. I didn't understand that. How long did it take to knit headless roses? That's a trick question. You're not motivated to do color work without lace. Well, then go for it. I will tell you that as far as just getting the color work with the lace, Love Child. Love Child is very straightforward if you like shawls. And that is color work lace. So, headless roses. I knit on headless roses. So the problem with headless roses, for me giving you a time estimate, is that when I was doing headless roses, I was also doing like 3 other pieces for third-party publications. So I was juggling a lot of commitments. So I had commitments to other people, and headless roses was my personal project. That I wanted to get done in time for Valentine's Day because it was a Valentine's Day release. So the fall leading up to Headless Roses, I was working on multiple different pieces, and I would work Headless Roses in when I could. Um, and it starts at one end, and I knit all the lace and got about halfway through the center part, and I realized with all of the commitments that I had that I was not going to reach my deadline. So I actually the second half of Headless Roses, I packed it all up and I sent it to a sample knitter that I paid to finish knitting it. I knew it worked. I knew what needed to happen. I had knit the bottom of it. I knit all the lace and I knit half the texture, and then I sent it to a woman I trusted who did sample knitting, and she finished the texture and did the second end. So I can't really give you a good time estimate on Headless Roses. It is a mile of knitting. It is a lot of knitting. I would allot a minimum of 2-3 months for it. I just was unable because of my other commitments to get it done. It was unfortunately when you make commitments to other people, your own personal things get pushed to the side. And since the only deadline I had for it was my own personal deadline, I didn't I wasn't able I wasn't able to knit it completely myself. I'm sorry. Um Thank you so much, Lee, for joining us. And actually, it's been almost an hour and a half. So I think it's time to wrap this up. There's been a lot of great questions. I'm pretty excited that we didn't ever actually start talking about needles because, oh my gosh, how did we not start talking about needles this time? I really enjoyed the beading conversation and all exciting things. Oh, Elizabeth, you did you knit a version of Headless Roses? Yes, that's nice. Well, thank you, Nikki. Thank you so much. Um, Arnetta. Oh, did I miss something, Arnetta? Did you ask me a question? Next time what? What did I miss? I don't want to miss something. Oh, maybe next time for the needle conversation. Maybe we talk about needles every time. Okay, I really appreciate all of you joining me. So I am leaving next week and I'm going to be gone for about 2 weeks. Okay, Arnetta, yeah, next time. So I don't know that I'm going to get videos ready to go up while I'm gone. So I'm thinking about taking a little bit of a break. I will definitely be back for the live at the end of July, and I'll try to get at least one other video out in July. But I think July might be kind of a little break time for me to take a little bit of a breather. I might actually go to the beach. Imagine that. I never go to the beach and I live here. Um, and so we do. But thank you so much. I really appreciate. Thank you, Cindy. Yes, give it the thumbs up. I really appreciate you joining us, and I will see you again. And but even while I'm gone, I will check my phone. We can always chat on the Facebook group if you have any questions or think of anything or just want to show off something you're working on. I would love to see it. So everybody have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And thank you all so much for joining us. And we will see you next time. Okay. I got to find the button. Okay. Bye bye. Do. And there.